The guest who checked in and never checked out. The check-in. It was a kind of night that smothered the sky with a heavy, bruised darkness. No moon, no stars, only the endless whisper rain cascading over the windshield as Daniel Carter drove along the narrow country road. His GPS had stopped working nearly 30 minutes ago, and his phone had lost signal the moment he exited the highway. The endless pine trees flanking both sides of the road seemed to close in tighter the farther he drove. Just when he thought he might have taken a wrong turn, the amber glow of a neon sign pierced through the downpour. Ravenwood Inn, vacancy. The letters buzzed with a low, sickly hum, and some flickered sporadically, as if trying to vanish from sight altogether. Grateful for shelter, Daniel pulled into the gravel lot. The tires crunched over wet stone, echoing in the silence as he parked in front of the aged, two-story building. The Ravenwood Inn looked like it hadn't seen a renovation since the early 70s. The once white paint on the siding had peeled into dirty flakes, and a collection of moths danced around a single porch light that barely held the darkness at bay. As Daniel stepped out, umbrella-less, the rain soaked through his jacket within seconds. He hurried toward the entrance. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit and smelled faintly of mildew and old wood. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, once floral, now a grayish green. A large grandfather clock ticked solemnly in the corner, its pendulum swinging with a quiet, deliberate rhythm. Behind the front desk sat an elderly woman with an oddly still expression, her skin pale like wax. She wore a dusty black cardigan and kept her hands folded in front of her, unmoving, as though she'd been waiting for someone for a very long time. "Welcome to Ravenwood Inn," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Checking in?" "Yes. Just for the night," Daniel replied, brushing wet hair from his forehead. "I got caught in the storm and, well, this was the only place I saw." She slid a large, leather-bound guest book toward him. "We don't take cards. Cash only." Daniel blinked. "Right, okay." He fished through his wallet and placed a few 20s on the counter. The woman handed him a tarnished brass key attached to a leather tag. "Room 6. Second floor. Don't mind the creaking. The building's old." He nodded, offering a small, uneasy smile. "Thanks." As he turned toward the staircase, the woman added, "Don't go wandering after midnight." Daniel paused. Sorry, but she had already turned away, staring blankly at the wall behind him as though he were never there at all. The hallway upstairs was long and narrow, with faded red carpeting that muffled his footsteps. Each door was numbered with dull brass plaques, and most of them had deep scratches near the handle. The lighting was poor, a few of the sconces flickering as if uncertain whether to stay lit or not. Daniel found room 6 near the end of the hall. The key stuck in the lock before turning with a reluctant click. The room was basic. A queen bed with yellowing sheets, a nightstand, and an old television set sitting atop a wooden dresser. A single window overlooked the back of the inn, revealing only trees swaying violently in the storm. He set his backpack down and flopped onto the bed with a sigh. The mattress was stiff and the sheets smelled faintly of mothballs, but at least he was dry and indoors. As he lay there, the ticking of the clock downstairs seemed to creep into his bones. He thought of the old woman's strange warning. Don't go wandering after midnight. A gust of wind rattled the window. Daniel sat up, uneasy. He'd always considered himself rational, a logical man. But something about this place gnawed at his instincts like rats behind the walls. He got up to check the lock on the door. It was secure. He tried turning on the TV to distract himself. Static. Every channel, just static. With a groan, he turned it off and instead opted for a hot shower. The bathroom was just as dated, with pale pink tiles and a mirror with a crack running diagonally through it. As the water heated, steam fogged the glass, and for a moment, Daniel thought he saw movement behind him. He turned sharply, but there was no one there. Only his own blurry reflection staring back at him. He rubbed at the mirror, revealing his face, pale, tired, and tense. "Get a grip," he muttered. Later that night, Daniel lay in bed, listening to the wind howl outside. The rain had slowed, but the inn seemed to take on a life of its own after dark. Pipes groaned. Floorboards creaked, and every so often he thought he heard soft footsteps pacing the hallway outside his door. He turned over, pulling the covers tighter, when he heard it, a whisper, faint but unmistakable. Daniel, his breath caught in his throat. He sat upright, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he called out. No reply. The air in the room had gone noticeably colder. He could see his breath now. His eyes darted around the room, but everything looked the same. Still, the sense of being watched wrapped around him like a shroud. Then, another whisper. "Don't leave." He sprang from bed and opened the door. The hallway was empty, bathed in flickering amber light. No footsteps, no shadows. Just a low hum of silence. Daniel closed the door again and locked it. His hands trembled. "I need to sleep. That's all. Just tired. It's just an old, creepy inn. That's all." He returned to bed, leaving the bedside lamp on this time. But sleep didn't come easily, not until well past midnight. And even then, it was a restless, haunted slumber. He woke to a sharp knock. 3 precise raps on the door. Daniel bolted upright. The lamp was off. Had he turned it off? He couldn't remember. The air was freezing again. He checked the clock on the nightstand. 3:13 a.m. He crept to the door and peered through the peephole. Nothing. He cracked the door open and looked out. The hallway was different. The lights were off completely, save for one at the far end, barely glowing. The carpeting was soaked, as if water had leaked through the entire floor. A dark trail, wet, thick, led from the end of the hall toward his door. Then something moved. A figure, thin, hunched, barely visible in the shadows. It took a step forward, the floor groaning beneath it. Daniel shut the door and backed away, chest heaving. The knocking returned, louder now. Bam, bam, bam. He grabbed his phone. Still no signal. The knocking stopped suddenly. He waited. Then, a whisper right in his ear. "You can't leave." He screamed, spinning around. No one was there. Just a mirror again, showing his wide, terrified eyes. But something was different. In the mirror, the door behind him was open, but in reality it was still closed. The Hall of Shadows. Daniel Carter stood frozen in the middle of room 6, heart hammering in his chest, the taste of panic sharp in his mouth. The image in the mirror was impossible, impossibly wrong. It showed the door wide open, the hallway beyond bathed in a sickly, unnatural light. But when he turned to look, the door was shut, the lock still in place, as if nothing had happened at all. A rational voice in his mind whispered that he must be dreaming, hallucinating, suffering from exhaustion after a long drive. But another voice, primal and gut deep, told him something was watching. Something knew his name, and it didn't want him to leave. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He sat in the corner of the room, legs pulled to his chest, watching the mirror, the door, the window, waiting for something to move, waiting for a reason to run. At dawn, gray light leaked through the cracked window pane, dull and colorless. With it came a strange, oppressive silence, as if in itself it exhaled after a long, restless night. Daniel opened the door cautiously, half expecting the hallway to have transformed into some grotesque version of itself. But everything looked normal. No puddles, no blood, no trail, no figure. Just the muted hush of an aging building that had long forgotten the concept of morning. He needed to leave. Now, he grabbed his things and descended the creaking staircase, his ears tuned to every groan and moan of the wood beneath his feet. The lobby was empty. No sign of the old woman at the front desk. No sound from outside. Even the rain had stopped, leaving the world heavy with post-storm dampness. Daniel rang the bell on the counter. Once. Twice. Nothing. He glanced at the guest book. Flipping back a few pages, he noticed something strange. All the names were written in the same handwriting. Every single one, stretching back over what appeared to be decades. And they all ended the same way. Each entry was scratched out with angry black ink. All except his. Daniel Carter. Room 6. Still fresh. Still untouched. He turned toward the door and froze. There was no handle. He blinked, stepped closer. The front door had no knob, no lock, no mechanism at all. Just a smooth, seamless surface where the exit should be, as if it had never been designed to open in the first place. Looking for something? The voice slithered from behind him. He spun around. The old woman stood at the top of the stairs now, her posture too straight, her face expressionless. In the daylight, her skin looked almost translucent. The sockets around her eyes were darker, deeper, and for the first time, Daniel realized she wasn't blinking. "Why is the door sealed?" he asked, voice shaky. She smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even human. "We don't get many visitors anymore. Most don't stay long enough to see the truth. I want to leave." She tilted her head. Slowly. Guests are always welcome to leave. Then open the door. "You haven't finished your stay." Daniel stepped backward until he hit the door with a thud. What the hell does that mean? But she didn't answer. Instead, she turned and glided back down the hallway behind the stairs, disappearing into the shadows without a sound. Her footsteps made no noise. No echo. Just gone. Daniel gritted his teeth and turned to the windows, hoping for another way out. But as he approached one, his stomach dropped. There was nothing outside. No trees. No parking lot. No sky. Just blackness. Thick, infinite blackness swirling behind the glass, like the world had ended the moment he checked in. He returned to his room, heart racing, palms slick with sweat. Every inch of his skin crawled with a feeling of being watched. This wasn't just an old hotel. It was something else. A trap, a cage, and he was the latest catch. He paced the room, considering his options. He tried calling emergency services on his phone. No signal. He tried shouting from the window. His voice was swallowed by silence. No echo. No answer. Just a cold gaze of nothingness. Then came the knock. Not at his door. At the wardrobe. He stopped breathing. The knock came again, slow, deliberate, from inside the old wooden closet. 3 times. Knock. 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 He picked up a nearby chair, heart slamming in his chest, and approached the door. It creaked open before he could touch it. Inside was darkness. Not emptiness. Darkness. Thick and heavy, like ink spilled into a well. Something shifted in that blackness. He couldn't see it, but he felt it, and it whispered, "She won't let you go." Daniel stumbled back, slamming the closet shut and jamming the chair against the handles. "Nope. Nope. No way," he muttered, backing toward the door. He had to find another way. A fire escape. A basement window. Anything. The hallways had changed again. Longer. Darker. Rooms that didn't exist on the second floor yesterday now lined the corridor. Room numbers were scrambled. 9, 12, 6 again, 17, 6 again. Room 6 repeated multiple times. Each one identical to his own. He opened one of them. Inside stood himself. Or rather, a version of him, standing at the mirror, watching the reflection, unaware of Daniel standing in the doorway. This copy of himself had bags under his eyes and a gaunt, empty stare. Then the reflection turned. Not the copy, the reflection. It looked directly at Daniel and smiled, then began to bleed from the eyes. Daniel slammed the door shut and backed away, gasping. This place wasn't just haunted. It was alive, feeding on him, duplicating him, twisting him. He tried another room. Room 3. It was different. Inside, the walls were lined with newspaper clippings. Hundreds of them, yellowed and torn. Each article told the same kind of story. Traveler missing near Ravenwood. Man vanishes off back roads. Motel employee questioned in disappearance. He picked one off the wall. 1987. Local schoolteacher disappears after storm detour. Last seen checking into a small inn on Route 41. Vehicle later found abandoned. Room undisturbed. No signs of struggle. Owner of the inn stated she never saw the man. Case remains unsolved. Daniel picked another. 1994. Couple vanished without a trace. Their belongings were found in room 6 at Ravenwood Inn. Front desk claims they never arrived. Investigators reported no exits or emergency fire doors on the property. The inn has since fallen off public record. Then, scrawled in red ink over one article. The inn remembers everyone, but no one remembers the inn. His breath hitched. He turned toward the corner of the room, where something sat slumped in a chair. A corpse, rotting, its features collapsed, as if time had fast-forwarded its decay. Clutched in its skeletal hands was a camera. On the lens was a tag that read, "For the next guest." Daniel backed out of the room in horror, his mind spinning. He didn't know what this place was anymore. Purgatory, a ghost trap, a curse. But it wasn't just haunted. It was sentient. As he turned the corner to head back toward the lobby, he found himself in a hallway he hadn't seen before. One door stood at the end, painted black, with no number. The moment his eyes landed on it, he felt it call to him. He approached cautiously. The air was heavy, each step like moving through water. He touched the knob. It was ice cold. And then the door opened on its own. Inside was a massive ballroom, impossibly large for a building this size. Dozens of people danced in silence, wearing elegant clothes from various decades, Victorian gowns, 1930s tuxedos, 1970s suits. But their movements were stiff, like puppets on invisible strings. None of them had faces, just smooth skin where eyes, noses, and mouths should be. As he watched in horror, they all turned toward him at once and started walking, not dancing, marching, toward him. Daniel screamed and slammed the door, sprinting back to the hall, heart thudding like thunder. The hallway twisted behind him, stretching, warping, until he burst back into the lobby, breathless and trembling. The old woman was there again, this time standing directly in front of the door. "You should not have gone in there," she said. "What is this place?" he gasped. "What do you want from me?" Her lips curled slightly. "We offer rest to those who are lost, but no one checks out until their stay is complete. I never want to check in." "But you did," she replied softly. "You always do, over and over." He shook his head. No, I'm leaving. I don't care if I have to break a wall down." "You can try," she said. "But remember this, there are worse things than staying." She turned, vanishing into the shadows once again. Daniel collapsed into a chair in the lobby, mind spinning. There had to be a way out. He wasn't the first trapped here. Maybe someone before him had left a clue, something the inn didn't want him to find. His eyes fell to the guest book, still open, still fresh. He flipped to the very back, where no names had been written. There, scribbled in frantic handwriting, "Don't sleep in room 6 twice." The mirror shows what it wants you to become. If you hear knocking, don't answer. There's a door in the basement, but you must pay the price to open it. His hand trembled as he traced the last line. The only way out is through her. The basement door. The words on the last page of the guest book pulsed in Daniel's mind like a siren. The only way out is through her. He didn't know who she was. Not really. The old woman? The inn itself? Or something worse? He slammed the book shut, the dust rising in a cloud that made his eyes sting. The lobby around him had grown dimmer, as if the very light of the place was being siphoned away. It no longer looked like a poorly maintained hotel. It looked sick, the wallpaper curled off in places, the edges bleeding dark mold. The carpet felt moist underfoot, and the air reeked of rot and iron. Somewhere in the distance, a slow creak echoed, like a door being opened or something crawling from a long-forgotten place. Daniel had a choice to make. Go back to room 6, where the mirror reflected things that weren't real, or perhaps too real, or find the basement, and the door mentioned in the guest book, a door that supposedly held the only way out. You must pay the price to open it. He made his way past the front desk. The old woman was gone again. The door behind the desk stood open now, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. No light shone from below. Daniel paused at the top, staring down into the thick, unmoving dark. He whispered to himself, "If this is the only way out, I'm not dying in this hotel." He took a step forward. The wooden stairs groaned beneath his weight, each one threatening to give way. Cobwebs clung to his arms and face like sticky fingers. As he descended, the temperature dropped rapidly. His breath turned visible. The walls narrowed, The space felt tighter, more suffocating. With every step, he could feel something watching from below, waiting. The staircase opened into a massive chamber carved into the earth. It wasn't part of the original building. This was older, much older. The stone walls were damp, slick with moisture and time. Candles lined the room, flickering blue instead of orange, casting long, wavering shadows across the floor. And at the far end stood the door. Tall, black, covered in strange carvings, symbols that twisted subtly when Daniel tried to focus on them, like they were alive. Chains bound the frame, rusted and heavy, each link etched with names. Some he recognized from the guest book. He approached slowly. On the floor before the door sat a wooden table. Upon it, a knife, a scale, and an old journal, its pages yellowed and water-stained. He picked up the journal. The first entry was scrawled in panicked handwriting. I've seen the ballroom. I've spoken to the woman. I tried to escape, but the walls turned to hands. I'm writing this in the hopes that someone smarter than me finds it. There's a price to escape, and not everyone can pay it. The door responds to sacrifice. It wants blood. Not just any blood. It wants guilt. Daniel's eyes dropped to the knife. The blade was curved, ceremonial. The handle was made of bone. Guilt. He thought about his life, about his brother, Evan, about the night 3 years ago, the snowstorm, the crash, the choice he made to save himself instead of turning back. No one else knew the truth. He had lived with it in silence. Had they incensed it? The journal continued. The more you carry inside, the more likely the door will open. But be warned once you open it. You can't unsee what's behind it. He stared at the scale. He picked up the knife. A whisper floated through the chamber. She sees you. Daniel closed his eyes, clenched his jaw, and dragged the blade across his palm. Blood spilled onto the table. It dripped down onto the scale. At first, nothing happened. Then the door shuddered. The chains tightened, rattled, and then one link snapped and fell to the ground with a heavy clang. The shadows around the room recoiled, as if in fear. The candles flickered violently. Somewhere behind him, the sound of footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. He turned, but there was no one there. Only the old woman's voice, floating from the dark. You've opened it, haven't you? Daniel turned back to the door. Another chain snapped free. Then another, and another. The blackwood cracked open slowly, revealing a corridor lined with flickering blue torches. The smell of earth and decay spilled out, and then the sound of crying, faint, childlike. From deep within, he hesitated. Then he stepped through. The corridor stretched on for what felt like miles. The walls whispered to him, guttural voices speaking his name, calling him deeper. Faces appeared in the stone, twisted and frozen in expressions of agony. He passed a mirror embedded in the wall. In its reflection, he saw himself, but older, hollow, dead-eyed, wearing the same clothes as the corpse in room 3. The reflection lifted a hand and touched the mirror. Daniel felt a cold finger press against his chest. He ran. At the end of the corridor, he burst into a chamber carved from black stone. In the center stood a pedestal, and above it, a figure hanging from the ceiling by its arms. Pale, bloodless, with long black hair covering its face. A woman, but not the one from the lobby. This one had no eyes. Her sockets were empty, leaking black tears that dripped onto the stone below. Around her neck was a sign. She remembers all. She raised her head, slowly, and spoke, not with her mouth, but directly into his mind. You carry guilt. Daniel fell to his knees, clutching his head. Yes, he gasped. I do. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for him to die. This place is built from sorrow, from regret. It feeds on people like you. Then let me go. Let me leave. You can leave, she whispered, but only if you give me something in return. What? The woman's body twisted, her limbs cracking. She dropped to the ground without a sound and stood upright, her face mere inches from his. The truth. Daniel saw flashes, visions not from his own mind, but from the inn itself. A man checking in during the 1950s, a traveling salesman. He killed a girl on the road, and buried her body in a ravine, then absorbed his guilt and trapped him forever. A teenage girl in 1974. She set fire to her school. 13 people died. She came here to hide, then devoured her. Over and over, the same pattern. Then didn't just trap people, it hunted regret. And now it wanted to become him. "Give me your sorrow," the woman said. "Let me take it. You'll forget, and you'll be free." Daniel hesitated. What would he be without his guilt? Without memory? Was freedom worth that price? But behind the woman, the blackness cracked open, revealing a circular stone archway, and through it, daylight. Real light. Trees. Wind. Freedom. All he had to do was say yes. He stepped forward. "I don't want to forget," he said, "but I want to be free." The woman tilted her head. "Then you are the first." She reached out, pressed her hand to his forehead, and the chamber exploded with screams. Daniel collapsed outside the Ravenwood Inn. It was morning, bright, birds chirped. The air was fresh. His car was parked exactly where he left it, undisturbed. Then looked newer, brighter, recently painted, almost welcoming. A woman in a blue sundress exited the front door, smiling politely. "Checking in?" Daniel stared at her, breathless. "No," he said. "I just checked out." She blinked. "Sir, this is a public museum. Then closed in 1995. "What?" She tilted her head. "You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." He looked back at the building. No guests. No old woman. No neon sign. Just a plaque near the front porch. Ravenwood Inn, site of 23 unsolved disappearances, 1931 to 1995. No bodies ever found. The man who remembered. Daniel didn't answer the woman. He couldn't. His mouth was dry, his mind spinning. The sun was shining. The air smelled of pine, and yet something still felt wrong. The Ravenwood Inn looked innocent now, painted white with crisp blue shutters, like a picture from a history book. Children's laughter echoed faintly from somewhere nearby. The place was no longer dead. It was alive and pretending. The woman in the sundress watched him with a mix of politeness and concern. "Are you okay, sir? We open at 10 if you're here for the tour." He swallowed hard. This place, it used to be a motel. People, they disappeared. The woman smiled gently. "Yes, the old Ravenwood Inn. Part of our town's darker history. They say it was cursed, haunted, but those are just stories." She looked him up and down. "You a history buff or something?" "No," Daniel muttered. "I stayed here. Last night. Room 6. Her brow furrowed. "That's not possible. Then hasn't been operational in 30 years. It's a landmark now. There's no power, no plumbing. We have fake furniture in the rooms for effect." "I'm telling you," he insisted. There was a front desk. An old woman. The lights worked. "I saw." He stopped himself. She remembers all. Her voice still echoed in his ears. "Look," the woman said softly. "You're not the first to say something like that. People come here, they feel strange things. Maybe it's just the air or the stories. But if you really need someone to talk to, I know a local counselor." "I don't need a counselor," Daniel snapped. She raised her hands apologetically and backed away. "Of course. Sorry. If you change your mind, we're giving a guided tour in an hour. Lots of old stories. Might help put things in perspective." Daniel nodded stiffly, though his mind was elsewhere. He turned and walked to his car, half expecting the keys to vanish or the engine to fail. But everything worked. The door opened. The engine started. The radio even crackled to life with some local folk music. Too normal. As he pulled onto the main road, he checked his phone. Signal bars returned. Notifications buzzed. Missed call, Evan Carter, 2 days ago. Text message. "Did you make out a storm?" Daniel blinked. That wasn't possible. Evan was dead. Daniel had watched his car flip over an icy guardrail 3 years ago. There was no way. The phone buzzed again. "New message. You left me behind. Do you remember now?" He dropped the phone onto the passenger seat, heart thudding like a war drum. He had told no one, not even Evan's fiancée. He had buried that night like a body in the dark. Now was calling back. The road stretched on for miles, but it didn't feel like he was going anywhere. Trees repeated in a loop. Landmarks vanished and returned. He passed the same mile marker 3 times. Mile 41. He stopped the car, pulled over, got out. The sky had turned darker again. Clouds rolled in unnaturally fast, swallowing the sun. The air felt electric and silent. No wind, no birds, no life. And then the humming. It started low, like a power line singing in the distance. Then it grew louder, closer, until Daniel realized it wasn't humming at all. It was chanting. He spun around. In the middle of the road stood a young girl, in a white dress, barefoot, head bowed. He called out to her. No answer. He stepped closer. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were sewn shut, threaded. Blood crusted the seams. She opened her mouth and screamed. Not a child scream. A wail of centuries. A sound so inhuman, it made his bones ache. Daniel staggered backward, clutching his ears. The sky split open, lightning without thunder. For a moment, the road beneath him cracked. And through those cracks he saw faces. So many faces, twisted in torment. All the guests who never checked out. The road vanished. Daniel jolted awake in his car, gasping for breath. Everything was quiet again, bright, trees swaying gently. He looked around. He was parked on a shoulder off Route 41. A pickup truck drove by, honking. Reality had returned. Or at least, something pretending to be it. He checked the time, 3:13 p.m. His phone was normal. No new messages. The text from Evan was gone. Had it been a dream? A vision? Was his mind unraveling? He didn't know, but he knew one thing. He hadn't escaped. He'd merely been let go. Daniel returned home to Chicago that night, shaken, quiet. His apartment felt different. Smaller, stale. Every mirror made him flinch. Every dark corner pulled at his peripheral vision. He left the hallway lights on. Sleep was out of the question. Instead, he poured a glass of whiskey and sat at his desk. He opened his laptop and typed. The Ravenwood Inn, a true story. He wasn't going to forget. Not like the others. The guests trapped in a loop. The girl with no eyes. The whisper in the mirror. The woman who remembered. He'd write it all, even if no one believed him. Even if it meant never sleeping again. It began with small things. Objects shifting. Lights flickering. Cold draft where there were no vents. Then the reflection came back. He caught in the bathroom mirror first, himself, standing still while the reflection smiled. Then it waved. The next day it winked. He smashed the mirror, but its eyes remained in the shards. Daniel took to covering mirrors, avoiding screens. He slept with the lights on. But one morning, his laptop turned on by itself. A blank document was open. Only one sentence was typed. "You forgot to check out." He slammed the lid shut. The lights in the apartment dimmed for a moment, then returned. The message was clear. Ravenwood wasn't done with him. He drove back 3 days later, through storms and fog, back to the edge of nowhere. But the inn wasn't there anymore. The road was smooth, freshly paved. No gravel lot, no signpost, just pine trees stretching forever, like it had never existed, like it had only been there for him. Defeated, Daniel turned the car around and saw the sign in his rear view mirror. Ravenwood in vacancy. He braked hard, turning again. No sign ahead. No building. Only behind him. Only when he wasn't looking directly. His stomach twisted. It was always behind him now. Waiting. He knew the truth. Once you've checked in, part of you never checks out. Back home, he started filming himself sleeping. He set up a webcam, curious to see what he did at night. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe he needed proof for his own sanity. On the third night, the footage showed something he didn't remember. At 3:13 a.m., Daniel sat up in bed. His eyes opened, but his face remained blank. He stood, walked to the covered mirror, removed the sheet. and whispered, "She remembers." Then he turned to the camera and smiled. The room beneath the room. Daniel stood at the edge of the tree lean, staring at the stretch of gravel that used to lead to the Ravenwood Inn. There was nothing there now. No building, no sign, no lights, just wind rustling through trees that felt too quiet for how alive they looked. But the gravel was warm beneath his boots, almost pulsing. He whispered, "I'm back." And the forest breathed. A warm gust of wind pushed past him, and as it did, the inn shimmered into view, not appearing in stages, but as if reality itself had blinked and corrected itself. The Ravenwood Inn stood proud again. Crooked shutters, flickering neon vacancy sign, though the letters V and C blinked erratically, and its sagging front porch like the mouth of a sleeping beast. He stepped forward, every instinct screaming at him to turn and run. But Daniel Carter had stopped running. He passed through the front door without touching it. It simply opened, like it had been waiting for him. Inside, the lobby was unchanged. The guest book still lay open on the counter. His name still the last entry. No date, no checkout. He approached the desk. There were no bells to ring this time. No old woman, just silence thick as tar. He flipped open the book again, flipping past his name into the final pages. More writing had appeared, this time in red ink. You've crossed the veil. The guest becomes a host. But the host never leaves the walls. Below it, key is in the mirror. He looked up. There it was, the mirror behind the counter. No reflection of the room. Only room 6. And on the desk in that mirrored world, the brass room key. He reached forward, unsure if it would even work. His fingers touched glass. Cold, slick, but then it gave way, like dipping his hand into water. He reached in, eyes wide, and pulled out the brass key. Still warm. As he withdrew it, a sound echoed through the room. A soft, slow clap. Daniel turned sharply. At the base of the stairs stood the old woman. Pale, eyeless, not blinking. "You returned," she said. "I'm here for the second door," he replied, holding the key tight. "The real one. The one behind the wall in the basement." She didn't move. "Then you already know," she said, her voice layered with something not entirely human. "Once you see it, you cannot unsee it." "Good. You'll never leave." Daniel stepped forward. "I don't care anymore." The old woman smiled and turned to dust. The staircase to the basement seemed longer this time. Each step groaned with memory. As Daniel descended, the air grew heavier, thicker. The candlelight that once lit the walls now pulsed in colors he didn't have names for. Blue, then violet, then something like the hue of dried blood. When he reached the basement floor, the old sacrificial table was gone. The scale, the bone-handled knife. Instead, the far wall was cracked open, as if it had been broken from the inside. He stepped through into a narrow, black tunnel, carved from stone, lined with symbols that glowed faintly as he passed. Ancient, older than language, the tunnel opened into a second chamber, larger, circular. This was a heart. In the center stood the second door, smaller than the grand, chained one before, but more unsettling. It was made of black with that shimmered like skin. No handle, no frame, only a single slit across the middle, like a watching eye. The key pulsed in his hand. And then the door whispered, "Offer it." Daniel closed his eyes. He knew what it wanted, what it always wanted. Not blood, not pain, truth. He stepped forward. "I left my brother to die," he said, voice shaking. "I saw him go off the road, and I didn't stop. I was scared, and I didn't go back. I told everyone I couldn't find him, that it was a storm, that I tried." The room trembled. "I lied. I didn't try. I wanted to survive more than I wanted him to." The symbols flared. The door exhaled a long, low breath, like the groan of a sleeping god. And then, with a slow, grinding sound, the eyes split open, revealing nothing. Just blackness. Endless, infinite black. But not empty. From within stepped a figure. Not a monster. Not a ghost. Evan. His face, as Daniel remembered, only paler. Hollow, tired. You came back, Evan whispered. Daniel choked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Evan nodded slowly. You always were. The air between them crackled with energy. The room shook. The door behind Evan began to change, shifting into mirrors, dozens of them, forming a circle around the chamber. In each mirror, Daniel saw himself. Different versions. Some screaming, some smiling, some staring at nothing. One slamming his head against the glass over and over, and one, calm, sitting at the front desk of the inn. The inn didn't just trap people. It copied them. It made them part of the building. Hosts, echoes, custodians of guilt. Evan reached forward. You can stay with me, he said. Forget everything. Let it take you. It's easier. Daniel backed away. No, you'll never be free. Maybe not, Daniel said, but I won't belong to this place. The key pulsed again in his hand, and this time it burned. He looked down. The brass had turned black, melted into his palm. The mirrors around the room began to crack. One by one, shards fell. Screams erupted. The calm Daniel at the front desk stood and pointed, mouth opening impossibly wide as black ichor poured out. You were ours, it shrieked. Daniel turned to run. The chamber behind him collapsed as the mirrors exploded, shattering reality around him. A storm of voices screamed in unison. You checked in. You never checked out. Daniel woke up in the middle of a road. Highway 41. It was raining. Hard. Cars passed. Headlights swerved to avoid him. Horns blared. A man in a truck stopped and jumped out. Hey, you okay? You hurt. Daniel sat up slowly. His clothes were dry. No mud. No blood. Just the key. The blackened brass key. Still in his fist. The man helped him up. What were you doing out here? There's nothing for miles. Daniel looked around. No inn. No forest. Just road and sky. And freedom. That night, he returned home. He showered. Ate. Didn't cover the mirrors. But when he looked at himself, he saw something different. Behind his own eyes. A flicker. Not evil. Not possession. Understanding. The Ravenwood Inn was a place built from lies. He had faced his truth. And that meant maybe, just maybe, he had finally checked out. The Echo Hall. Daniel slept that night for the first time in weeks. Not well, not dreamless, but without waking at 3:13. He woke to the sun, actual sunlight, breaking through his windows, not to whispers, screams, or mirror reflections moving on their own. His phone buzzed with real-world notifications. A missed call from his boss, emails, a calendar reminder for a dentist appointment. Everything felt painfully, gloriously normal. He wanted to believe it was over, but the key told him otherwise. It now hung around his neck, not by choice. He'd tried to throw away twice. The first time, it was back in his coat pocket within the hour. The second time, it turned up in a sink, dripping wet, even though the faucet hadn't run. So he wore it, not as a trophy, but as a warning, a reminder. You escape, it whispered sometimes, but not everyone did. The guilt hadn't vanished. It had deepened. Now it wasn't just about Evan. It was about them, the others, the people whose names he had read in the guest book, the ones trapped forever in the walls, in the mirrors, in the rooms of the inn. They hadn't been weak, just broken. Like him, but unlike him, they were still there. So Daniel did the only thing he could. He went back to Maya. She had looked surprised when he walked through the door. I figured you'd return, she said. That place doesn't let go easy. I think it let me go, he said. But not all of me. He told her everything about the second door, the mirrored cells, Evan, the explosion of glass and shadow, the chamber collapsing, and the key that still pulsed like a second heartbeat around his neck. I think, he said, voice hoarse, I was supposed to become part of it, one of the watchers, the hosts, but I made a different choice. Maya leaned forward. So you broke the loop? He hesitated. Maybe, but I saw what's still inside. I saw what it does to the people it keeps. They're not dead. Not yet. They're fragments, pieces, conscious and screaming. I saw their eyes behind the glass. Then what do you want to do? Daniel gripped the key. Go back. She blinked. You're insane. Maybe you barely survived it. If you go back again, I won't survive. I know that, but maybe I can set them free. That night, Daniel and Maya returned together. But this time, they brought more than fear. She had discovered something. Old blueprints of the Ravenwood property from 1910, when it was still a hunting lodge. Hidden beneath layers of renovations and forgotten wings was a room referred to as the Echo Hall. No photos, no description. Only one note scribbled in the corner, sealed after disappearance of Isaac Wren. No retrieval. This hall, Maya explained, might be the core, the place where the inn's influence began. If we can find it, maybe we can shut it down. The inn revealed itself again only when they approached together. It didn't flicker this time. It stood tall and still under the moonlight, fully expecting them. Its windows were lit now, but not with warm yellow glow, cold white, the kind used in morgues and interrogation rooms. The lobby was unchanged, dusty, timeless. The guest book was open, Daniel's name still there. But now, a new entry underneath. Maya Tran, one guest. She hadn't written it. She stepped back, pale. It knows me now. Daniel nodded grimly. It always does. They made their way through the back hallway, where the blueprint had marked the concealed wall. Daniel felt the tightening around them. The hallway seemed longer. The doors multiplied. Room 6, 7, 8, and then 6 again. Then 3, then 13. It was looping them. Maya reached out and grabbed Daniel's arm. Stop. Close your eyes. What? Just do it. Walk blind. He hesitated, then obeyed. With eyes closed, they walked 10 steps forward. At the 10th step, the air changed. Colder, sharper. Maya opened her eyes. They were standing before a door they hadn't seen before. Made of glass, cracked and smudged, with one word carved above it. Echo. The room inside was enormous. A grand hall made of mirrors. Hundreds of them, hanging from walls, resting on pedestals, floating midair without support. Some were broken, others perfectly clean. In every one, Daniel saw himself, or versions of himself. Some sobbing, others laughing hysterically. One was on fire. Another was aged beyond recognition. One grinned and pointed at him with blood-drenched fingers. Maya gasped behind him. In her mirrors, her, bound, screaming, eyes gouged out, silent. The inn takes guilt, she whispered, and multiplies it. A low hum began to rise from the room. The mirrors began to breathe. Then, one by one, they started whispering. Familiar voices. You left me. You ran. You smiled when you lied. You deserve to die in room 6. Maya covered her ears. Daniel stepped forward toward the largest mirror at the far end of the hall. In it, Evan. But this time, not as a shadow or hallucination. Whole, broken, waiting. He pressed his hand to the glass. And Evan reached back. You finally came for me, his brother said. But you don't belong here anymore. I'm not leaving without you. Then you'll never leave. Behind Daniel, the mirrors started shattering one by one. Each screamed louder than the last. Maya collapsed to the ground, holding her head, bleeding from her ears. Daniel turned to her. Get out, he shouted. I'll end it. She tried to speak, but only choked on blood. The final mirror cracked. Daniel grabbed the key around his neck and turned back to Evan's reflection. Is this what you want? He cried. Evan didn't answer, but someone else did. The old woman's voice echoed through the hall. Return the guilt, and the walls will fall. Daniel looked at the key. Then he looked at Evan, and he stabbed the key into his own reflection. The glass exploded. A soundless detonation. Time fractured. The mirrors melted. The room folded inward like paper. Daniel and Evan fell into blackness. Maya screamed his name, then was pulled from the chamber by invisible force. The last thing she saw was Daniel standing alone, surrounded by crumbling versions of himself, and smiling. She woke up in her car. It was dawn. The Ravenwood Inn was gone. So was Daniel, but clutched in her hand, the guest book, open to a new final page. Just 2 words, scrawled in shaking ink. Checked out. The ones left behind. Maya sat in her car for hours, staring at the guest book. She didn't remember leaving the inn, didn't remember running, didn't remember the drive. But the guest book lay in her lap, smudged with dust and age, yet her own name was written clearly inside, along with Daniel's last message. Checked out? The 2 words pulsed like a heartbeat on the page. Around her, the forest remained silent. Birds chirped. A breeze rustled through the leaves. Sunlight filtered down. It felt too perfect, too safe. She had a terrible thought. What if she never left? She drove straight back to Chicago, pushing the speed limit, ignoring rest stops, barely blinking. When she reached her apartment, she immediately ran to her bathroom and uncovered the mirror. Just her, no movement, no reflections waving back. She exhaled shakily. Then she picked up her camera gear and started recording a voice memo, her fingers trembling slightly. My name is Maya Tran. I am an investigative journalist, and I have just returned from the Ravenwood Inn. I think my friend Daniel Carter entered that place weeks ago and came back with something following him. He went back in, and now he's... She hesitated. Dead? Trapped? Gone? She continued. There's a room in that place. They call it Echo Hall. It shows you who you are, or who you could be. It feeds off guilt, off memory. Daniel faces reflection. I think he freed himself. I think he chose not to become part of the inn. She closed the recorder, slumped into her couch, slept for 12 hours. When she woke up, the guest book was gone. The next day, she received an envelope, no return address. Inside, a Polaroid. It showed Daniel, standing in front of the Ravenwood Inn, but the photo was old, weathered, yellowed at the corners, like it had been taken decades ago. He looked calm, and the word checked out was handwritten in thick black ink across the bottom border. On the back of the photo, only 3 words. He stayed behind. Maya dug into every public record she could find. Property logs, building permits, missing persons reports. She went back further, pre-Ravenwood, back to the original land purchases, when it was still a lodge owned by a man named Isaac Wren. Isaac had vanished in 1910. No remains, no note, just gone. But in the town library's archives, tucked inside a box of handwritten journals, she found something chilling. The walls do not forget. The guilt becomes mortar, and the guests become mirrors. I built this place to house secrets. It learned to grow on its own. Signed, Isaac Wren. The inn had been alive since the beginning. Maya started a podcast. She called it Checked In. Each episode told the story of a missing person who had passed near the Ravenwood area. She linked them all, shared the eerie similarities, the lingering silence around each case. She told Daniel's story, though she changed his name to protect his family. People listened, and then they started writing back. One email read, I stayed in room 9. My friend disappeared the next day. Another, I've seen the mirror walker. She smiles like my mother, but it's not her. And the most disturbing one, my name is Marcus. I left the Ravenwood Inn in 1994. I still don't cast a reflection. Please help me. She replied to them all. And then on the podcast 10th episode, she received a voicemail. Low quality. Static-filled. A man's voice. Barely audible. Maya, the key doesn't unlock the door. It opens you. I see everything now. I'm still inside, but not alone. Tell them. She's waking up. It ended in silence. She played it back 12 times. She knew that voice. Daniel. Something inside the Ravenwood was changing. Whatever Daniel had done in the Echo Hall, it had rippled outward. The energy around the inn was unstable. More people started finding it, and not all of them escaped. A teenager named Alina from Michigan drove out after hearing Maya's podcast. She was never seen again, but her dash cam footage showed a split-second glimpse of the Ravenwood Inn standing in the middle of the road, where nothing had existed a moment before. Another guest named Malik claimed he entered the lobby and saw his own mother, who had been dead for 7 years, offer him a key and asking, "Have you remembered yet?" The Ravenwood wasn't hiding anymore. It was calling. Maya returned, not physically, but in dreams. Then began appearing again, its hallways, its doors, its whispers. At first, it was silent. But one night, she heard a knock at her bedroom door at exactly 3:13 a.m. She opened it. No one there. Only a key, black and brass, and a note, "One room left." The rooms that follow. Maya didn't touch the key. She stared at it for an hour, her mind cycling through every memory of Ravenwood, Daniel's final stand, the fractured mirror cells, the way the walls watched. The black and brass key sat on the floor just inside her apartment, gleaming dully under the hallway light. She reached out once, then recoiled. One room left. Who left a note? How had they gotten inside without triggering the alarm? And worse, why did the key look just like Daniel's? That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she did what journalists do best. She investigated. She sent the key to a private lab for metallurgical analysis. She hired a tech to examine her apartment security footage. She traced a voicemail that claimed to be from Daniel. The voicemail had no origin. It wasn't routed through any known tower or provider. It had simply appeared. The security footage? At exactly 3:13 a.m., the camera cut out, black for 66 seconds, then resumed. When it came back on, the key was there. No footsteps, no shadows, no sound, like it had always existed. And the lab results? The metal wasn't brass. It was something older, an alloy no one could fully identify, laced with traces of sulfur, bone ash, and human hemoglobin. The technician had written at the bottom of the report, "Whatever this is, it's not from any factory. It was forged, possibly ritualistically." That night, Maya dreamed of doors, infinite doors, hung in the air, buried in trees, floating in lakes, standing in rows across deserts. Each door had a room number. Each one knew her name. She passed room 6, room 13, room 3, but they were all wrong. Not hers. Not yet. Then she reached one that glowed red with candlelight from beneath the frame. Room 0. The door opened by itself. And Daniel stood there, or at least what was left of him. His face was pale, but his eyes were bright with something ancient, something heavy, something knowing. He didn't smile. He only said, "You brought them here, Maya. Every story, every listener. They hear you. Now they remember too." The door slammed shut. She woke up screaming. Maya tried to stop the podcast. She unpublished the episodes, closed the website, deleted the files, burned the guest book. But the next morning, the podcast was still online. New episodes had uploaded themselves. Voices she didn't recognize. One was a sobbing man whispering. She walks the halls with no face. Another was a child counting. 1 room, 2 room, my room, your room. And one, the last one, was Daniel. "They aren't rooms anymore," his voice said. "They're in people, in memories, in guilt. That place learned how to follow us. We brought it home." The key was back on her floor again, but this time there were 2. Across the country, strange phenomena began to occur. People began reporting dreams of hallways they didn't recognize. A woman in Iowa claimed her basement door began opening every night at 3:13, revealing a room that wasn't part of her home. A man in Oregon was found in a hotel room, curled in a bathtub, eyes gouged out, whispering, "Check-in complete," over and over again. A child in Detroit drew a picture of their imaginary friend, who wore a motel uniform and said she lived a room under mirrors. None of these people had ever heard of Ravenwood until someone played Maya's podcast in the background. Maya knew what she had to do. She returned to the woods outside Ravenwood's last known location. There was no one now, no flicker, no gravel lot, no building, just trees and silence. But she walked anyway. She walked until her legs burned and her lungs ached. And then she saw it. Not the inn, but a mirror, freestanding, tall, framed in the same black wood as the second door. She stepped in front of it. Her reflection stared back, then blinked, not at the same time she did. Behind her reflection, Daniel. He placed a hand on the mirror from the other side. Maya did too, and the glass turned liquid. She stepped through. The temperature dropped instantly. She stood now in a corridor, not the lobby, not room 6. This one was new, silent, endless. The walls pulsed softly. She realized they weren't wood. They were flesh, covered in veins that faintly glowed with memory. Doors lined both sides. Each bore a name. Some she recognized from the guest book, some from the podcast messages. One read, Maya Tran. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was not a room. It was her life. Photos of her childhood. The day she found her first missing person case. Her father's funeral. The day she met Daniel. Every mistake. Every regret. Playing out like scenes in a theater. She watched herself lie to a grieving mother. Watched herself ignore a phone call from Daniel that could have saved him weeks earlier. Watched herself choose a story over someone's safety. She fell to her knees. This is what the inn feeds on. Came Daniel's voice behind her. Not fear, not pain, just the things we never made right. She turned. He looked more like himself now. Less ghost, more human. But I saw you, trapped, in the mirrors. I was, he said, but that was just one of me. Every person who enters leaves a version of themselves behind. I found mine, faced him. And now, I'm trying to burn it down from the inside. The room trembled. Alarms, screams, wind howling through doors that hadn't existed seconds before. Daniel turned to her. You're the storyteller, Maya. You gave it a voice. But maybe now you can shut it up. How? He handed her something. Not a key. A matchbox. From the Ravenwood Inn. On the back, in his handwriting, what was built on guilt, burns, and truth. He smiled weakly. Time to light the exit. The match and the memory. Maya held the matchbox in her trembling hands. It felt heavier than it should have, like it held more than sulfur and cardboard. It held choice. Across the room, Daniel stood quiet, watching her. He looked tired, older, as if every minute in this place added a year to his soul. Yet he stood tall, resolute. Once you strike it, he said softly, this place either burns or it multiplies. Maya stared around the room that reflected her past. The memories still played on the walls like old film reels, silent and relentless. Her life, her failures, her guilt on display. All of them true. All these people, she whispered. All these rooms. If we burn this, do we destroy them too? Daniel stepped closer. No, he said. You free them. They're not alive in here. Not really. Just trapped moments. Echoes. The real ones, the souls. They've already slipped through cracks, waiting to be let go. She closed the matchbox, breathing hard. How do you know? Because I saw Evan, Daniel said. And when I told him the truth, I saw him fade. Not screaming. Not angry. Just released. Maya swallowed. So this is what truth does? It burns, he said. But it also sets you free. The hallway outside Maya's room had changed. The doors now stood wide open. From them, the others stepped out. Mirror selves. Some broken. Some hostile. Some sobbing uncontrollably. They surrounded her. Her reflection stepped forward, bleeding from the eyes, a gaping grin splitting its face unnaturally wide. You were always a coward, the reflection whispered. Always hiding behind the story. Always too afraid to step into it. Maya stepped forward, heart pounding. I know, she said. I used the stories for clicks. I exploited pain. But I came back. I'm here. I'm facing it. The mirror self screamed. A high-pitched, inhuman sound that rattled the walls. And then it shattered. Maya stood still as shards of glass fell at her feet. Daniel was smiling. That's one. Together, they made their way back toward Echo Hall. They fought them the entire way. Rooms looped. Lights failed. Floorboards tried to swallow their feet. Ghosts stepped from mirrors and whisper forgotten names into their ears. And always, the clocks reset to 3:13 a.m., no matter the time. But Maya held the matchbox tight, and the closer they got to Echo Hall, the louder they groaned, like it knew, like it feared them. Echo Hall had changed since the last time. The mirrors were cracked but standing. The candles had all gone out, and in the center, the chair had returned, but not empty. The old woman sat in it again, eyeless, smiling. "You can't destroy this place," she said. "You are this place." "I'm not," Maya said. "I'm not staying." "Then you leave your door open," the woman whispered. "Another will enter. It always begins again. This place doesn't end. It moves." Daniel stepped forward. "But we can burn it down." The old woman laughed. "Burn memory? Burn truth?" "No," Maya said, "but we can burn the lies we build over it. We can stop feeding it." The old woman's face melted into something monstrous. Dozens of voices screamed from her mouth. The mirrors all shattered at once, spraying the room with glass and darkness. Maya struck the match. It flared white-hot, and for the first time in decades, the inn screamed. The flames didn't behave like fire. They didn't spread, they crawled, like thoughts igniting, like shame unraveling. One by one, the rooms went up, each door engulfed in flickering orange light, releasing a sigh as if someone inside had exhaled for the first time in years. Outside, the foundation cracked. The walls peeled like dead skin. The guests, those lost fragments, stepped out of mirrors and smiled as they disappeared. Not burned, freed. Daniel grabbed Maya's arm. "You need to go. Now." "What about you?" "This place was part of me for too long. I don't leave with you." She wanted to argue, but she saw the truth in his eyes. He had become the fire. She ran. Through the collapsing hallway. Past screaming reflections. Through doors that tried to close on her limbs. Until she saw it. The mirror she had entered through. Still glowing. Still liquid. She dove. Maya awoke in her apartment. On the floor. The key was gone. The mirrors were still. No time read 3:13. No whispers in the walls. Just silence. Peaceful. Hollow. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "Thank you, Daniel." 1 year later. Maya stood at the edge of a forest off Highway 41. The old gravel road had been paved over. Nothing remained. She was finishing her final episode of the Checked-In podcast, live on site. "I came back here today because I needed to see for myself. And I'm telling you now, the Ravenwood Inn is gone. For good. There's no building. No sign. No trap. Just trees. Just wind." She paused. "I don't know what it was, or what we really did that night. But I know this. It let go. And so can we. This will be the last episode. No more guest stories. No more chasing shadows. We've done what we came to do." She turned off the mic. Breathed. Closed her eyes. Peace. Then, a rustle behind her. She turned. Nothing, but a shape, just for a moment, seemed to flicker between the trees. A door, a brass key glinting in the dirt. But this time, she walked away.